Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be a review of the second trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. Now just beware, there may be spoilers in this breakdown for all movies within the MCU, particularly of the last couple of Spider-Man films, so just beware just in case you haven't seen them yet. Now as we all know, Spider-Man No Way Home is the 27th film within the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the third entry of the Sony Marvel films of Spider-Man, following Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home. Now there's been such an unrelenting and feverish anticipation of this second trailer, especially on social media. There's been lots of speculation about who will appear, who won't. Will we see indeed the previous actors who have played Spider-Man in this trailer, Tobey Maguire and Andy Garfield? And following the first trailer, and you can check out my review of that trailer and I will leave a link within the description, a lot of people have been asking what implications will there be, not indeed for the only Spider-Man films within the Sony universe, but also with the MCU itself. Now the previous trailer showed us very much a story where Peter Parker was asking Doctor Strange to reverse the time event, which basically saw his identity being outed by J. Jonah Jameson, if you remember from the end credit scene of No Way Home. And following this adventure, this will lead to the expanding of the multiverse that has very much been hinted, certainly since we saw the finale of Loki. Now Spider-Man No Way Home is due for release in some international markets earlier on December the 15th, and then it will be shortly released afterwards in the United States on December the 17th. But despite all of that intro, we're going to talk about the trailer itself now. Now, just general thoughts being, I think overall it was very much more of an action-packed and spectacular trailer as opposed to the first trailer. We got very good special effects and explosions and lots of appearances of classic characters from the previous Spider-Man films. But my only fear is that the trailer itself felt very much more like a greatest hits revival rather than showcasing us anything particularly new. So we saw all of the classic villains from the Sam Raimi films and the Amazing Spider-Man films, but it didn't really leave you absolutely exhilarated. It didn't really leave you showing anything particularly new to really get you invigorated to the story. Now I'm pretty much sure there are going to be lots of surprises going into this trailer, and they don't want to spoil that, so they withheld a lot back. But at the same time, just from this overall trailer that I'm seeing here, it's basically showing us what we've seen before, where we've seen Spider-Man encountering all of these villains. So for me personally, it was a good trailer. It did enough to get you interested, but there was nothing truly groundbreaking or truly revealing, as I mentioned a lot of people were garnering in terms of their expectations going to this overall trailer. So we're just going to go over some of the standard elements that I thought within this trailer and how they can hinge or hint certainly at a much more expanding storyline. So in the beginning scenes, we see the first shot here of Peter standing in the rain looking very ominous. So I assume that this scene is actually at the end of the movie. I stated in my previous trailer review that we're probably going to end this movie with Peter having to make a certain choice, whether he stays in the current reality where everybody knows who he is, or whether he ventures over to another reality where nobody knows who he is, but at the same time he's going to have to separate himself from all of the characters that we've known in the Marvel Spider-Man films so far. That's overall my thinking behind this whole venture between Sony and Marvel, that this movie and the whole expansion in the multiverse is a way to separate the two characters of Spider-Man, to allow Sony and Marvel to use them more freely for their own particular universes. So that's what I believe this scene is hinting at here. And then we get some lines from Doctor Strange where we basically see him looking at Peter, stating that he botched the spell to make everybody forget his identity. I assume this is the point where we saw in the first trailer where Doctor Strange is trying to exhibit the spell and then Peter is interrupting him, and that's what distracts Doctor Strange, and then that's when we get that big explosion. And we get that line from Doctor Strange that essentially we've got visitors from other universes, and then that's when we see the next couple of scenes when we see the explosion in the highway and we see the emergence quickly of Green Goblin. We get another cool shot where we see Peter Parker, I assume, in that black costume. If you notice from the first trailer, we did see him running around in the cafeteria in a black costume. And then we get some more shots here of the version here. We had later scenes where we see him swinging along the electrical pylons. I assume this is going to be an encounter against Electro. And we also saw what was already revealed in the first trailer where we see the appearance of Doc Ock. I think Alfred Molina still looks good. It wasn't quite clear how much is him and how much is CGI. We always know Marvel looks to perform that de-aging process when they get these experienced actors in these roles. But overall, I like these sequences where we see Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock and he's swinging under the cars and evading all of his tentacles, which still look very good. They've of course recreated the same look as what we remember from Spider-Man 2, but I liked these scenes overall. And we see here that Doc Ock relates to the fact that he's not Peter Parker, or definitely not the one that he knows. So there's going to be a bit of watching all of the villains trying to readjust to the certain timeline that they've been brought under. Another standout point is when we go back to the black Superman costume, it looks here like he's exhibiting some sort of energy waves, very similar in design if you remember from Shang-Chi in terms of the 10 bracelets. Now I don't think there'll be any links to Shang-Chi within this movie. I think this is more of a construct that maybe is linking to Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange himself has a very similar aesthetic when he exhibits his powers. We get a kind of yellow, golden, spherical look about his powers. So that's what I think this is hinted to. So at first, I thought this might be Andrew Garfield in a suit, but I do think it's Tom Holland. I think this is maybe late in the game where he has to confront Electro and he's had to take some sort of power from Doctor Strange in order to defeat him. This could be a device that also allows him to switch between other universes, but other than that, we don't know. But look at the black costume itself. It's far more textured and detailed. It's almost got like a cybernetic feel to it. So maybe they've made some enhancements from the original black costume that we saw in Spider-Man 3. But it still looks cool overall, and I like the shots here that we see him throughout this trailer. Now we do get that other line from Doctor Strange where he states that all of the previous villains died fighting Spider-Man. Now I don't believe that was the case. If my memory serves me right, I don't think Green Goblin, the second Green Goblin, didn't die, and I don't think Sandman died either, if I remember correctly. So whether we get a hint of a further fate that preceded these villains, could this be Doctor Strange lying? I'm pretty much sure we will get some sort of evil version of Doctor Strange, some sort of doppelganger version that Peter Parker has to encounter. We get that scene later on when Peter steals the box, or the time travel device it seems, from Doctor Strange, and we see various scenes after that where he's swinging through the city and he's got the box on there. So is this Peter trying to find an alternative method to fix this mess overall, where Doctor Strange basically say there's only one way and Peter Parker steals this device in order to find another way to sort everything out? And this follows after where we see the following scenes where we see Doctor Strange battling Spider-Man, where he's using his energy waves, swinging Spider-Man from the branch. And then we get that scene where we saw from the first trailer, where he basically pushes Peter out of his astral plane. I love those cool visuals that we saw from the Doctor Strange movies as well. So clearly this is an alternate version, I believe, that Peter Parker is battling. And this fits in very well with the scenes that we saw from the first trailer, where we see Doctor Strange on the train and throwing the trains around Spider-Man as he's trying to avoid him. We then get the reveal of Jamie Foxx's as Electro, and they've changed the design. If you remember from the Amazing Spider-Man Part 2, he had much more of that blue glow and that bold look about him. So they've changed hair where he's got this hair, and if you see quickly, they've given that headshot of the more classic Electro helmet that we know from the comic books. To be honest, this didn't look that impressive to me. It resembled a bit actually Killmonger's look from Black Panther, if you remember. Now, it will be interesting to see how prominent a role Jamie Foxx plays as Electro. He wasn't really a villain that really got me too invested in terms of the character. I really didn't like the interpretation, but here we get this shot of Electro, and then we get that big massive money shot, of course, where we see Electro, Sandman and Lizard all standing together as one, facing off against Spider-Man. Now many people, when going over this trailer, they have noticed that if you look carefully, you see that the Lizard takes a certain punch in a different direction, and some of the trajectory of the three villains in the shot doesn't quite match in terms of Tom Holland Spider-Man. So has there been a bit of digital trickery here where we've had erased the shots of other Spider-Man? Is this a shot where we see three Spider-Man taking them on? Now, to be honest, from a plot story point of view, that would make sense. And normally when we're dealing with these superhero films, you always get that kind of battle royale stage at the end, that big battle at the end where we see all heroes and villains coming against each other. Now, one criticism I think of this, it does remind me a bit of the big climax that we remember from Spider-Man 3, where I believe you had Spider-Man taking on the likes of Green Goblin, Venom and Sandman as well. That sequence itself felt very much of a bit weightless to me. I hope we get a bit more than just a big battle climax at the end. I want a bit more weight and a bit more significance in terms of the overall climax. And then we end the trailer with that final shot of MJ falling down and Peter diving down to save her. Of course, this evokes memories of the same sequence that we saw in Gwen Stacy's character with Emma Stone, if you remember, falling down with Andrew Garfield failing to save her. Of course, this is an allusion to the classic Green Goblin arc within Spider-Man, where essentially it is Gwen Stacy that falls to her death following the battle against Green Goblin. Will they kill off Zendaya's character in this role? I don't think so. We do have that shot where we see the hand latching onto hers. Now, this could be clever editing. This could be another scene. This could link back to the first scene of the trailer where we see Peter Parker standing in the rain. As to what I mentioned before, there's going to be some defining choice that he's got to make. So maybe he decides to stay as Spider-Man, but as a result, it ends up with MJ falling to her death. There's going to be some sort of tragic event or consequence. Now, of course, the big talking point is going to be the fact that we didn't see Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield in this trailer at all. Now, if you are involved in social media and the overall commentary of this movie, you know there's been endless speculation about whether we will indeed see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in this trailer. And following this trailer itself, I know there's going to be a lot of people complaining online that we didn't see them. Now, I'm going to be in extreme minority here, but to be honest with you, I don't really care about seeing Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. I just think it's overall fan service. And if you think about it, if they really had a substantial role within this film, we would have known about it. Not only would have known about it, Sony would have marketed it that, right? They would have surely shown them, if not in the first trailer or in the second trailer. If it's that much of a surprise, then it's going to be really a small little cameo. Right, but if they are in substantial scenes, then Sony would have surely used that in terms of the promotion of this film. In terms of bringing back both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, that would have cost Sony quite a bit in terms of overall salary. So I don't think it's quite worth them being involved that much if it's going to increase the overall budget of this film. And to be honest with you, I'm more interested in the overall implications regarding the multiverse and whether we will indeed see Tom Holland crossing over to the Sony universe. And also, how will this link to the events that we saw in Loki? And just because we see these current villains making an appearance, that doesn't mean to say that we may not see more villains from the Spider-Man films, or indeed more people from the other MCU films, right? Because we're opening up the whole multiverse, so that's got multiple different ramifications that could be really interesting to see. So I'm far more engaged in that storyline rather than just seeing Tobey and Andy on the movie for about 5 minutes, because that's all it's going to be. I hate to disappoint anybody that's watching this video, but it really doesn't mean that much to have them in this movie. And to be fair, Sony have never said that. They've never said that Andy and Tobey will be in this movie, and in various recent interviews, Tom Holland has stated that they actually aren't in the film. So if you go into this film expecting them to be in this film and having a huge amount of influence, then to be honest, that's on you. I think you really need to kind of calm down your expectations. As I mentioned before, Sony have never said they'd be in it, Kevin Feige has never said they'd be in it, and Tom Holland has said they're not in it. So I think you actually now have to come to the realisation that we may not be seeing Andy or Tobey in this movie at all. There's part of me that's happy about that, because as I mentioned, this trailer overall, it really just feels more like glorified fan service. And going into this film, I want more. I want more in terms of an actual substantial story. If this is indeed going to be Tom Holland's last appearance within the MCU, I want it to be more about that rather than him seeing Tobey and Andy, because I think any of their appearances doesn't really have any longevity or lastability in terms of the overall story. So I'm far more invested in the overall conclusion of Tom Holland's arc as Spider-Man, if that's the case, and if indeed he will be going over to the Sony universe. That's far more what I'm invested in. But overall, in terms of its trailer itself, I think it was very exciting, very action-packed. There's lots of razzle and dazzle and spectacle to keep you invested in this film overall. I have liked the Holland version of Spider-Man, even though I'm not a massive fan of the Iron Spider suit itself and the fact that it's got all nanotech inside it. One bit to mention also is that we see a couple of shots here of Doc Ock, where it seems like his tentacles have been covered in the same Iron Man armour in terms of the red and the golden yellow. So has he managed to assume some sort of nanotech from Stark Industries? We wait and see as well. But in general, yes, I think it's a shame that we don't see the classic red and blue costume of Spider-Man. I know this is down to merchandise and maybe licensing deal as well, that they can't use the classic iteration of the costume, but I just think it's a shame, you know, far more from a classic fan standpoint, that I want to see Spider-Man in his original suit. I don't like this whole Iron Spider where he's got to rely more on his AI rather than his wits and his senses itself. It's only just over a month now till this film comes out, so I'm pretty much sure they have saved some sort of secrets and revelations. And I think it's actually quite a novel situation that we're going into a big blockbuster comic book movie where we don't have all the answers. We're keeping ourselves guessing. So if we do get any cameo appearances, it's going to be far more fulfilling going into them in the cinema itself rather than having them spoiled or leaked online. And given the recent leaks that Sony has experienced, not only with this movie but other movies itself, I think it's very sensible for them to be far more circumspect and far more secretive as to what they're actually revealing within this trailer itself. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings on the second trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited enough? Are you very disappointed that Andy and Toby didn't show up? Or are you like me, that you don't really care and you're far more invested in the whole multiverse story arc and the implications that will have both in terms of Sony films and Marvel films going forward? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.